Have you ever heard the doorbell ring, and instead of feeling excited, you suddenly feel a wave of dread wash over you? It's not because you dislike the person outside, you're not angry, and you're certainly not being rude. You just wish you didn't have to answer. You might glance at the clock hoping they'll go away, or maybe you pretend you're not home even though your car is in the driveway. If that sounds familiar, take a breath. You're not alone, and you're not strange for feeling that way. As we get older, something shifts. Our energy changes. Our priorities change. We don't crave the same things we used to. Maybe when you were younger, you welcomed the noise, the chaos, the back and forth of social visits. But now peace feels like gold. Silence isn't empty anymore. It's sacred. In today's video, we're going to talk about a feeling that many older adults experience, but hardly anyone ever talks about. The quiet discomfort, even anxiety that can come from having guests. We'll explore what's really going on underneath that feeling, and why it's not a flaw in your personality. In fact, it could be a sign that you're more in tune with yourself than ever before. Let's start with something simple but powerful. The difference between people who get their energy from the outside world and those who get it from within. Some people light up in a crowd. They feel alive when they're surrounded by others, talking, laughing, shaking hands, making plans. Those people tend to feel recharged after a social gathering. They thrive on interaction. You might call them social butterflies or just plain extroverts. But then there are others who feel exactly the opposite. After just an hour of chit-chat, they're completely worn out. A visit that seems harmless on the outside can leave them drained for the rest of the day. Their mind gets foggy. They just want to sit down in silence, maybe with a cup of tea and a book, and not speak to anyone for a while. That's not rudeness. That's not being cold or unfriendly. That's just how their inner battery works. For these folks, the best way to recharge isn't by being around others, it's by being alone. And that, my friend, is perfectly normal. In fact, it's a natural part of how many people function, especially later in life. But here's the catch. Our society doesn't really celebrate solitude. It celebrates activity, conversation, engagement, being available. So when someone prefers to be alone, especially at home, it can make them feel guilty, like they're doing something wrong. But think about this. Your home isn't just a place you sleep or eat. As you get older, it becomes something far more meaningful. It becomes your sanctuary, a sacred space, a place where everything makes sense, where your body relaxes and your mind finds peace. You know that feeling when you finally come home after a long day, kick off your shoes and let out a deep sigh, that moment of relief. That's not just physical comfort, that's your soul saying thank you, we're safe now. Now imagine anyone, walking into that space unannounced. Their energy, their voice, their stories, their expectations. It's not always that they're negative people. It's just that the moment they step in, your space changes. You go from being in rest mode to on. Suddenly, you're playing host. You're filtering your words, managing small talk, maybe worrying if the dishes are still in the sink or the light is too dim. It's no longer your space, at least not in the same way. That shift can be subtle, but it's powerful. And for people who are deeply connected to their home, who find strength in solitude, that shift can be exhausting. You see, when someone walks into your home, they're not just stepping into your living room. In a way, they're stepping into your inner world. They don't realize it, but you feel it. Your home reflects your energy. Each room, each object, each quiet corner holds part of you. There's your favorite chair by the window, the soft blanket you always reach for, the humming fridge, the old clock ticking on the wall. These things aren't just things, they're part of the rhythm that keeps you grounded. When visitors come, even with good intentions, that rhythm gets interrupted. It's like someone playing a different melody over your favorite song. And here's the part most people never talk about. Being visited means putting on a version of yourself. The polite you, the friendly you, the I'm happy to have you here. You, even if deep down you're counting the minutes until the visit ends. You smile, you nod, you ask the questions you're supposed to ask. You might even make coffee, even though you just cleaned the kitchen and were looking forward to resting your feet. It's not that you're faking, you're just switching into host mode. But that switch costs something, it takes energy. And after a certain age, your energy becomes a resource you don't want to waste. This is why many older adults find themselves pulling back socially, not because they've become bitter or closed off, but because they've started to understand what peace truly feels like. They've begun to protect their energy, their rhythm, their space. It doesn't mean they don't care about people, it means they care about themselves too. So if you've ever felt that strange mix of guilt and relief when a guest cancels their visit, know that you're not alone. There's nothing wrong with you, you're simply listening to what your body and mind are asking for, and that is something to respect, not resist. Now imagine this, someone rings your doorbell. You weren't expecting them. You weren't emotionally prepared. You were in your element, reading, baking, or just sitting in silence, and suddenly you're pulled out of that state. Your peaceful rhythm is gone, and now you're trying to find the right words, the right mood, the right tone, even though all you really want is to go back to the quiet. In moments like these, your body knows what it needs, but your social conditioning tells you to be gracious. So you smile, you invite them in, but inside, you're fading. That inner resistance is real, and it deserves your attention. Because the truth is, your discomfort isn't random. It's not a bad habit. It's not selfishness. It's a sign, a gentle whisper from within that says, this space, this peace, it matters. You've lived long enough to understand what drains you and what restores you, and slowly you've begun to choose restoration. That's wisdom, not weakness. And here's something worth remembering. It's okay to love people and still need space from them. It's okay to say, not today. It's okay to close the door and not feel bad about it. That doesn't make you cold. That makes you aware. Because the older you get, the more sacred your time becomes. The more you begin to understand that not every knock on the door needs to be answered. So what's really happening inside you when someone comes over and you feel uneasy, not just annoyed or tired, but almost as if something deep inside you pulls away, tightens up or shuts down? That feeling isn't random. It's not dramatic or overly sensitive. It's actually a sign that something in you is being activated, something you might not always be aware of. You see, over the years all of us collect experiences, emotions, stories we never fully processed. We push them down, we tuck them away, not because we're weak, but because we had to. Life demanded we move on, be strong, hold it together. So we did. But those unspoken parts of ourselves, they never really disappeared. They live inside us like old photographs in a dusty box, quiet but powerful. And every now and then, something or someone touches them. Not directly, not on purpose, but a word, a tone, a story, a gesture. Suddenly that box gets rattled. That's why a simple visit can stir up such strong emotions. You might not be able to explain it, you might feel silly afterward, but what's really happening is that a sensitive part of you has been touched. Maybe something unresolved, maybe something still healing. That discomfort you feel isn't just about the visitor. It's about what the visitor unintentionally triggers inside of you. It's a blind spot, an old wound, a piece of yourself you haven't brought to light yet. And that's not something to fear, it's something to respect. Because the only way to live with peace in our later years is to stop ignoring those whispers from within. There's a saying, what you don't bring into the light will continue to rule you from the dark. And that's exactly what happens when we constantly force ourselves to be social, to be available, to be on, even when everything inside us says, I need rest, I need space, I need time to just be. But here's the twist, most of us wear a social mask. We've done it for decades. It's the version of ourselves we show at family dinners, in community groups, at church, or even with friends. That version is polite, pleasant, cooperative. It knows how to ask, how are you? It knows how to smile. It knows how to make coffee, keep the conversation light, offer cookies, and nod along. But it's a role. It's not fake, but it's not the whole truth either. The problem comes when you feel like you have to keep wearing that mask even in your own home, even when you're tired, even when you need quiet. Because when your home stops being a place where you can be fully yourself, something starts to break down. You lose that sacred inner space. You start performing. And performing, my friend, is exhausting, especially when you've spent a lifetime doing it. That's why saying no to visits can feel like an act of survival, not because you're antisocial, but because you're finally realizing your energy is sacred. You're starting to understand that peace isn't optional anymore. It's essential. So if you've ever caught yourself thinking, why am I like this? Why do I feel so much better when I'm alone? Here's what I want you to know. You're not broken. You're not rude. You're not shutting people out. You're waking up. You're listening. You're protecting something fragile and beautiful inside you that maybe for too long you've ignored. Let's talk about 6 powerful truths that might just explain why you feel this way and why you have every right to honor it. First, you're likely more sensitive to energy than you realize. You pick up on people's moods, their stories, their stress, even if they don't say a word. When someone walks into your home, they're bringing more than just their body. They're bringing emotions, unspoken thoughts, tension, and energy. And you feel it, sometimes deeply. That's not weakness, that's awareness. Second, your inner system needs space to breathe. Time alone isn't wasted time. It's your mind and body recalibrating. One unexpected visit can throw your whole day off, not because you're fragile, but because you were in alignment. You were balanced, and that visit pulled you out of it. Third, too much interaction, even the friendly kind, can make you lose connection with yourself. You start talking and smiling and hosting, but inside you drift. You feel like you've stepped away from your true self. That's not because you don't like people, it's because you've learned how much it costs you to keep the social performance going. Fourth, the presence of others can stir up hidden parts of you. It might be memories you've buried, old patterns you haven't quite healed. Maybe the visitor reminds you of someone, or maybe their presence just scratches the surface of something deeper. It's not their fault, but it's not yours either. You're not overreacting, you're responding to something that's asking for your attention. Fifth, that deep urge to be alone is not isolation, it's a sign of transformation. It's your soul saying, we're shifting, we're growing, we need time to reflect. Sometimes being alone isn't about hiding from life, it's about preparing to re-enter life more fully, more honestly, on your own terms. And sixth, the most powerful shift of all, you're learning to say no without guilt. You're realizing that boundaries don't make you unkind, they make you whole. That just because someone knocks, you're not obligated to open the door. That you don't owe anyone your energy when you have none to give. Every time you say no to something that drains you, you're saying yes to something that heals you. It's a quiet revolution, really, a sacred act. And it's one of the most loving things you can do for yourself. So next time you feel that tension rise when someone wants to come over and you don't have it in you, listen to that feeling. Trust it. It's not selfishness, it's self-respect. You've spent enough years putting others first. Now it's time to make space for what your soul needs most. There's an old image that comes to mind. Maybe you've seen it somewhere. A quiet figure walking alone with a lantern in hand. Long robe, thoughtful eyes, a soft light cutting through the dark. Some call this figure the hermit, but he's not lonely, he's not lost. He's searching for something within. That image speaks to something many people begin to understand only later in life. Because when you're younger, you're encouraged to always be out there in the mix, making plans, showing up. The world praises busyness, but as we age, something inside us begins to crave the opposite: stillness, silence, depth. The need to withdraw isn't about giving up, it's about tuning in. Some people might look at you and say, you're pulling away from everyone. But maybe you're not pulling away, maybe you're pulling inward. Maybe you're choosing to pay attention to something the noise of the world never gave you time to hear. That quiet figure with the lantern, that might be you. Because the moment you say, I'm staying in today, or I need time alone, you're listening to that inner call. And that takes courage. Choosing solitude in a world that constantly pushes connection is a radical act. It's not rejection, it's refinement. It's not about loneliness, it's about aligning with what your soul really wants. The truth is, deep solitude has power. It gives you the space to think clearly, to feel deeply, to grieve what needs grieving, to celebrate what needs celebrating. It gives you room to understand yourself, not just the parts you show to others, but the parts you rarely share. And that understanding, it changes everything. Because once you've found comfort in your own presence, you stop chasing people who don't respect your peace. You stop apologizing for needing quiet. You stop second-guessing your worth, just because you prefer evenings at home over loud gatherings. The hermit isn't a failure, he's a guide, a guardian of wisdom. He walks in silence not because he has nothing to say, but because he's listening for what truly matters. That might be the most beautiful part of aging, the ability to finally hear yourself. But does that mean we shut everyone out? Not at all. The art, as always, is in the balance. Because while your soul may crave silence, it also needs moments of real connection, the kind that fills you up, not drains you. It's not about quantity anymore, it's about quality. It's choosing to spend time with people who nourish you, people who don't expect you to perform or entertain, people who can sit with you in silence and still feel close. And it's about learning how to create boundaries without guilt, how to say I need time alone without offering an explanation, how to make room for both solitude and togetherness, each in their proper place. You can protect your quiet without becoming isolated. You can love others deeply without letting them invade your sacred space. You can care without carrying, and you don't need to explain that to anyone. The truth is, this is your life, your time, your energy. After years, maybe even decades of putting others first, maybe now is the moment you finally come home to yourself. You can begin by listening to your inner signals, that tightness in your chest, the heavy feeling when your calendar is too full, the exhaustion after a conversation that went on too long. Those aren't inconveniences, they're messengers. When your body says slow down, believe it. When your mind says I need space, honor it. You've earned the right to protect your peace. It might feel strange at first, saying no, canceling plans, turning down an invitation, not because you have something else to do, but because you want time alone. But you don't need a reason to rest. You don't owe your presence to anyone if it costs you your peace. And that doesn't make you cold, that makes you whole.
So create little rituals that protect your quiet. A cup of coffee in the morning with no phone, a slow walk in nature, reading a book without interruption. Let your home be your sanctuary, not a showroom. Let your alone time be sacred, not something to apologize for. Let the people in your life know, gently and clearly, what your boundaries are. And if they can't respect them, that tells you more than words ever could. And above all, be kind to yourself, because this journey, this return to your truest self, isn't always easy. The world may not understand it, but that doesn't matter. Your soul does. You are allowed to evolve. You are allowed to change your rhythm. You are allowed to grow quieter, softer, slower. You don't need to explain your silence. You don't need to justify your stillness. You simply need to trust that the version of you who craves solitude is also the version who is finally listening to what truly matters. So if you've ever wondered, why don't I enjoy visitors the way I used to? If you've ever felt guilty for loving the quiet, for needing time alone, for saying no to one more get-together, I want you to hear this clearly. You're not doing life wrong. You're finally doing it in a way that feels right to you. And that is something worth celebrating. If this video spoke to your heart, leave a comment and let us know how you feel when guests come over, or how you protect your peace at home. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to my channel, and share this with someone who might need to hear it today. You are not alone in this journey, and the peace you've been craving, it's yours to claim. Here's to protecting your quiet, here's to honoring your soul, and here's to living your best life on your terms, at any age.